Gon sucks. He really does. He's selfish, morally great, kind of pathetic ability-wise, and generally a detriment to everyone around him. Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for psychotic preteens. My name is Liam and this is something I've wanted to do for a while. I have mixed feelings on Gon. If this character were a cocktail, then he'd be made up of 1 part standard shonen protagonist, 1 part crippling hypocrisy, 1 part daddy issues, and 2 parts of very, very angry little boy. Depending on who you speak to, Gon could be one of the most loved shonen protagonists or one of the most profoundly hated. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that he is a child, which is not at all a rare thing for a shonen series. Most of its protagonists are children and or young adults, which is just a fancy way of saying children. But among them, Gon may be the most realistic incarnation of what would happen if you put a 12-year-old in these sorts of extreme situations. Not everyone is a Goku or a Luffy or an Asta, and generally kids in these kind of situations, they're probably not going to turn out too great. Gon is not an inherently good or bad person. It's sadly not as simple as that, because Gon's own simplicity prevents that sort of designation. The best way I think I could describe Gon, and probably any preteen, is that they are a blank slate. It's very easy for us adult folk to judge what actions are right or wrong according to a stringent code of morality or societal rules that we've developed over decades. However, when it comes to the mind of a child, distinguishing good from bad, it's surprisingly not that easy. That's why they're children, because they're still learning the things. And in that way, I would actually strongly compare Gon to Meruem, both of whom were completely inexperienced children things struggling to define their place in the world. One began in your more standard nurtured human upbringing, whilst the other was brought into the world with the mindset of a violent ant creature. Also, this video is sponsored by The Ants Underground Kingdom, the world's first ant-based simulation strategy mobile game available on the Amazon App Store, where you can save up to 25% on apps, games, and in-app items using Amazon coins. I mean, really, have you ever wondered what it would be like to become the all-powerful Ant King? Well, in this game, you get control of your own anthill to serve as your base for exploration and building. Plus, it features a funky gacha system for hatching hundreds of special ants, and you can even learn their real habits in-game. They're all simply waiting for you to discover, cultivate, and form the ultimate ant army. Plus, this game is so damn smooth, featuring stupidly high-quality graphics and an art style that I would describe as both elegant, realistic, and cute. I said both, but then I said 3 things. Well, I'm not taking it back. This game has over 35 million downloads, and you can plus 1 by clicking the link in the description, but in addition, they've also prepared some wonderful gifts for everyone if you enter the following code in-game. Gifts are nice, so do that thing, but for now it's back to you. Me. One began in your more standard nurtured human upbringing, whilst the other was brought into the world with the mindset of a violent ant creature. And yet the two of them really aren't all that different. We see both of them grow, learn, make choices, and in the end, the monster ends up not quite being the one who it is that you thought it was. I said that terribly, but I'm not re-recording it. Which brings us to point number 1 as to why it is that Gon sucks, which is that he is incredibly selfish. For the most part anyway, because there is something that we need to note right out of the gate. In Hunter x Hunter, Gon's character is inconsistent, and it's because of Togashi's evolving writing style. He did not start the series with the intent to corrupt Gon, and as a result, a lot of his actions during the Hunter exam and Zoldyck family arc actually fit quite perfectly into the standard shonen protagonist tropes. He is kind, caring, observant, and generally portrayed as like a second coming of Jesus Christ, because he's always helping, healing, and saving those around him. And whilst Gon does have a couple of troubling retrospective red flags during these arcs, his evolution came later, along with Togashi's abrupt shift in writing. From about Heaven's Arena onwards though, Gon becomes problematically selfish. One great example is deliberately disobeying Wing, who told him not to take a match on the 200th floor for 2 months, so that Wing could properly teach him Nen and, as a consequence, teach him properly not to die. But Gon heard this and thought, I kind of want to punch some things. So he took a match against Guido, lost horrifically, and risked himself becoming permanently injured or even being killed. Not for any greater reason, mind you. In a more standard story, the protagonist could still do this, but they would have a much stronger reasoning behind it. Like maybe their friend was captured and they were forced to fight. Or they're on a clock and they'll be ejected from the 200th floor in 24 hours, so we've got to take action. Or perhaps the protagonist just has some serious beef with the person they agreed to fight, like, oh, they're gonna mess you up. And that goes on to teach them a lesson about controlling their emotions. Gon has none of this. He was not forced to fight. He had no feelings towards his opponent whatsoever. There was no time pressure and no one was in any danger. No one except Gon, who put himself in the danger. But essentially, Gon just did it because he got impatient. And I love that, because it's exactly what a child would do. Gon doesn't understand the consequences that his actions will have, and really what 12-year-old does. I call Gon selfish, which is a fairly negative thing, but that's a problem for him as a person. However, for us as readers and watchers, it is quite a unique treat. It makes Gon worth paying attention to, because his crippling flaw has the ability to generate some pretty peak and naturally occurring drama. Like I said, in a more standard series, the hero would need a more convoluted reason to break the rules, which sometimes can feel a bit clunky with the wrong author, but Gon is unrestricted by all of that. He can do anything and everything because he's just a stupid, selfish child. And that allows him to explore a lot of ideas that other main characters are forbidden from touching on. One of which is the fact that Gon falls into a very morally gray area. And for this, I'm going to reference the YouTuber Alexander, who made a video essay on Gon's moral hypocrisy, which is a very worthwhile video to watch. But during it, Alexander dwells on one of Gon's lines during York New City, where he asks Crollo, "How can you kill people who have nothing to do with you?" And Alexander goes on to point out how Gon became exactly the type of person that he accused Crollo and the troop of being. I would never join you, you bad people. I would rather die than become whatever it is you are, you naughty, naughty spiders. And a lot of people would interpret this as Gon, taking a bit of a jab at Crollo, more or less to display his moral superiority and disapproval of Crollo's actions. I have a different take though. When Gon asks, "How can you kill people who have nothing to do with you?" it strikes me as less of a jab and more pure curiosity. The same way that a child would ask their parents how babies are made because they're unaware of all of the sex and stuff. I do think that Gon is genuinely curious. And as we would later come to learn, Gon doesn't have, particularly strong moral positions on stuff like murder. One great example of which is Benoit, a very minor yet extremely important character within our journey of Gon. Despite being a cold-blooded serial killer, he gets put in an almost tragic situation where he is tortured in a hole for 10 days by our protagonists. I'll say that again. Our protagonists caught a man and tortured him for 10 days in a hole, all for the purpose of making Gon and Killua stronger. It's okay though, because Benoit, he's a piece of shit, right? Well, no actually. I mean, according to Gon, yes, it is okay. But also according to Gon, Benoit is a pretty cool dude. After getting as much out of his victim as possible, Gon thanks Benoit, gives him an honorable bow, and even refers to him very respectfully as Benoit's son, ultimately letting him go, despite the fact that doing so could endanger the lives of countless people because, again, Benoit is a serial killer. That is the terrifying magic of Gon, though. His childlike mind is either so pure or maybe so sociopathic that he doesn't see the issue with that, because Benoit helped him. I mean, against his will, mind you. But because Benoit helped him, that makes Gon appreciate him. And if that's not morally gray, then I don't know what is. And like I said before, there were red flags all throughout Hunter x Hunter. Like when Killua ripped out that dude's heart and Gon's response was, "You know what, I'm gonna make that guy my best friend, yeah." Again though, this is not a bad thing, not at all. The fact that Gon has no clearly defined morality beyond whatever seems to serve him best in the moment makes him infinitely interesting to follow, because it makes his actions and future story developments very difficult to predict. And reason number the third why Gon sucks is because he is consistently outclassed by almost every other character in Hunter x Hunter. This is probably where Gon sucks the most. As a main character, he is almost always the weak link in whatever group he's a part of. His best friend Killua is light years ahead of him, Kurapika swiftly advances beyond anyone's expectations, Bisky and Kite, they're obvious veterans, and even the more rookie hunters like Knuckle display a clear dominance over anything and everything Gon is capable of throwing at them. Not only that, but Gon does admittedly sometimes have good battle senses, but more often than not, he seriously fails to judge the situation correctly. Gon is nigh on incapable of reading his opponents, instead always choosing to launch straight into battle, which almost always leads to dire arm-losing consequences. And the reason why I love this is again because it is realistic. A 12-year-old with no combat experience who just learned Nen a couple of months ago would get absolutely trounced by even the lower tiers of power in this world. And as a result, that makes the world of Hunter x Hunter feel very intimidating, because we're looking at it through the lens of someone who is simply ill-equipped to deal with the overwhelming challenges thrown his way. Like, you see this duck? This duck is every opponent Gon faces in Hunter x Hunter. And as a result, every time a fight started, I felt a genuine sense of dread, because I knew that Gon might not do the classic thing of power up or think of a clever idea to get out of this intimidating duck situation. Every fight Gon engages in presents a scenario where he could and has on multiple occasions been permanently injured or even fatally wounded. And I like that Gon's fight history in Hunter x Hunter shows just as many losses as it does wins, perhaps even more. Now, to be clear, Gon does have some, how shall we say, natural benefits tossed his way, with being a 1 in a million gifted Nen user, and of course being the son of one of the most powerful deadbeat dads in all of manga. But considering that, he almost sucks even more, because he was born into a natural chosen one style power, and yet at every turn he still usually fails. But the true genius here is that eventually Togashi uses Gon's weakness that has been on display throughout the series as one of his crowning aspects of character development during the Chimera Ant arc. Here Gon becomes consumed by his own weakness, and while it is portrayed as a response to Kite's death, this has really been a whole series coming. Kite was the straw that broke our Gon camel's back. Before now, his shocking weakness had not led to any serious non-arm related consequences, but when faced with the idea that his weakness cost Kite his life, Gon went on to choose the most childlike path possible, and he decided to throw a tantrum. A very serious and a very emo tantrum, but a tantrum nonetheless. And it shows his emotional immaturity, which again, he is 12, so this is exactly the kind of thing that would happen. I mean, just think back to your preteens. Every time something slightly bad happened, it was like the world was ending. It was consuming, frustrating, and painful, and you were probably incapable of seeing the bigger picture around it. And now apply that to an event as traumatic as Kite's death, and I think that Gon's reaction is pretty damn spot on for his age. Gon very rapidly reached a point where his selfishness, inexperience, immaturity, and weakness transformed him into a person that was no better than the Phantom Troop or even Benolt. Gon was more than willing to kill Komugi, a completely innocent person during the palace invasion, all because he was so consumed by his own faults and lust for revenge, which, as we all know, eventually culminates in the terrifying transformation to adult Gon. This right here is the true tantrum, where Gon in the heat of the moment decides to throw everything away. His life, his relationships, and his ability to use Nen, all for the sake of taking revenge against an androgynous kitty cat. And I know that a lot of people here try to argue that Gon was backed into a corner and he did it for survival, but that's not what happened. At this point, Gon didn't care about whether he lived or died. The only thing he cared about was cracking Pito's head open and feasting on the goo inside, making them pay for killing Kite, thus simultaneously satisfying Gon's need for power, and in the only way he could think of, make the situation right for Kite. And obviously those happened in her completely twisted ways, but that is the beauty of Gon. He's one of the only shonen protagonists who has had this option of falling into complete darkness, so much so that in my opinion he ended up as more of a villain than Meruem did. So what is there left to say about Gon? Well, he sucks, there's that. He's very simple-minded with that simple mind, generally focusing on selfish desires. He's emotionally immature, as arguably all 12-year-olds are. His experiences in life so far have left him in a very morally grey and sometimes quite morally black area. Despite all of his natural advantages in life, he wanders this world being almost pathetically weak compared to those around him, and when he finally does achieve that world-class power, it is a hollow victory which came at the cost of everything. I mean, when I put it like that, it's a really tragic story, but one that I am very glad I got to experience. He's not a hero, he's not a role model, and he's not even a great friend to those he cares about within the world itself. Gon just sucks, and that's what makes him such a fascinating protagonist.